Mike Nowling. I'm a teacher at Columbia City High School, and today is June 15th, 2003 in Clinton, Indiana, and I will be interviewing my dad, Arthur Seth Nowling, and his experiences during World War II. So first of all, Dad, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted, yeah, under the draft, World War II draft selective service system, yeah.
Okay, and what branch of the government were you in? What branch of the armed forces?
Started out in infantry training, but ended up in the Corps of Engineers after arriving in Japan.
Okay, do you remember or recall what boot camp was like and where you went?
Well, I remember going to Louisiana through Arkansas, which was flooded out at the time. It was hot, humid in Louisiana, Camp Livingston. It was sort of a rigorous training that we went through. Various projects, various rifle ranges, machine gun ranges. We had bivouac areas and bivouac out for, say, maybe 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And then 2 or 3 long marches that we had to undergo, which were pretty rough.
Do you remember
in the hot weather?
Do you remember any of the instructors and what they were like? Were they pretty tough?
Well, most of them
were they pretty nice?
Most of them were ex-Army people that had war experience themselves, and they were pretty good for most part. They wouldn't ask you to do something but what they wouldn't do themselves, and it was pretty rough, but still they had a lesson to teach us.
Were you in pretty good shape when you went there? Conditioning? Did they have pretty tough conditioning?
For most part, yes. You ended up in pretty good shape. Yes.
Okay. Where was it exactly that you went? This is like in 1945. You went in what month would it have been? In August, or was it a little earlier?
I went in April. Actually, on my discharge papers, it shows the 23rd of April. I actually went into the Army, and then my training ended in August, early September, at Camp Livingston, and we were allowed a 10-day delay en route to go home before we were shipped to various other places. But that took in what they call a 17-week basic training is what it was.
Okay, and then where did you go when you were assigned and you had your orders to go overseas? Where did you go overseas?
I reported to Fort Riley, Kansas, then on to ended up at Fort Lewis, Washington, Seattle, Washington, where we boarded the ship at that area, at Seattle. There was one other place in Oregon we were at for a few days, but not very long.
And this is on the way to Japan, right?
On the way to
What was that like,
Japan.
going across the ocean?
Well, it was kind of rough. I never did actually get sick, if you so to speak, but it was boring, nothing to do on board ship but just sit and watch the water. The mighty Pacific is a lot of rolling waves out there on those ships, and but I'm not just sure where the route took us. We never did get to Hawaii or anything like that. We went direct toward Japan. And,
do you remember what city you landed in Japan when you landed?
the first area or city was at Nagasaki in the bay. We were there for a while, and for some reason we didn't get off the ship there, because that's where they dropped the first one of the atomic bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went to Nagoya, and that's where we got off of the ship, the troop ship.
So when you were on the ship, the peace treaty was signed. Is that right, approximately, you think, or close to that?
It had already been signed in September, and so the war was actually over when we were en route. I believe the war was officially over September 5th, I'm not sure. But my training ended in September, along in there sometime, and then we were sent home on our delay en route, and then we proceeded to our...
So you were part of the occupation troops?
That's right. We were more the occupation troops of Japan, and replaced those that had been in, a lot of them for a long time, and a lot of veterans passed through there.
What was your job assignment? Like, what did you do? You did several things. What were some of the things you did?
Of course, I was assigned first to this 544th Engineer Boat and Shore, and my job assignment was in the headquarters company as the main clerk typist in the, for the main commanding officer. I done typing of all the special orders for the regiment, or anything else that was designated by him or people of authority in that particular headquarters office. And I done all of the typing and message writing, orders of the day that went out to the different companies. And of course, each battalion is made up of 4 companies, and the regiment had, I think, 4 battalions in it, and then it had the main headquarters company that served the whole regiment for equipment, for everything, for orders. And that's the part we were.
And then you also had guard duty and some of those kind of things that you did too, right? That was something you did.
Yeah, we would perform guard duty off and on at various times around the base area or around the headquarters company area. That wasn't very often in the 544th, because some of the other troops, it was rotated and you didn't have to worry about it. But yeah, we had guard duty there at times.
And then how would you describe Japanese people that you saw or encountered? What was it like seeing Japanese people that had just surrendered?
Most of them were very, I don't know, sort of meek and humility, sort of. Well, they were a defeated nation, and they didn't have much to say. Of course, we couldn't speak Japanese, they couldn't speak English. I'm sure they was wondering about us, how we were going to treat them, and especially a lot of the soldiers. I'm sure they sort of expected to be treated a little rough, but there was several of them around. You could always spot them by their way they were dressed. They didn't actually wear their uniforms, but you could tell that they had been but the people as a whole were pretty, they were pretty well humble people.
They were devastated, people. I'm sure.
And they were, yes.
The bombs.
Yes, they
Both
were
of the bombs.
They were a defeated people. That's the pride and the glory is all out of them. I mean, they was, and I'm sure a lot of them were really hurting at that time too. And it was pretty hard to see some of them.
Well, did you win, or were you awarded, I would say, any medals while you were there with your group you were with, and also yourself?
I wasn't awarded any personal type medals other than those that I think were listed at another point. We did, when the 544th Boat and Shore deactivated, we did receive a meritorious service plaque. And I don't know what happened to the big plaque, but we were entitled to wear like a gold wreath on our arm, signifying that it was a meritorious service thing, commendation thing, for the way it was all handled when we deactivated. Of course, that took many people to do that. It wasn't just our end of it, but it was a lot of work to deactivate an outfit that size anyway. You know.
Also, was it a Victory Medal or something you mentioned?
World War II Victory Medal. I was entitled to wear that. That was one. It was a ribbon. It wasn't an actual medal, but it was a ribbon. Asiatic Pacific Theater ribbon, and I think the one was a Japanese Army of Occupation ribbon or something, Japanese, I don't remember what I said it was. But anyway, there was three ribbons that I was entitled to wear, and that was about the extent of any medals. And those weren't personal ones, they were just by the fact that I was there.
Well, what kind of an assignment did you have, or title? Also, as far as your
Well,
rank?
I was a clerk typist. That was my actual assignment, or my class. My classification was technician, 4th grade. But when other personnel, the older personnel that had been in the outfit a long time, were sent home and dismissed, we filled their positions, and of course the ratings and the ranks were passed out pretty freely, and so happened that I was a clerk typist, and it called for the rank that I got, and it worked out real well as far as pay grade, you know, and that's what it was all about. And so yes, it was clerk typist was actually the real classification and job that I done. And
how did you keep in touch with friends and family back in the United States? Was that pretty regular also?
Mostly by just letter. No, I don't remember any phone calls. In fact, I don't know of anyone other than upper echelon type people that might have had phone calls. But mine was strictly with by letters, and of course at that time it would take maybe a week for stuff to get to you, and a week for stuff to get, the letters to get over here, and mostly communicated with home, and very few other people, but just mostly home that I communicated with.
Well, what was the food like? The Army food and any of the...
It wasn't too bad. After we had the trainings, part of it at Camp Livingston was all over with, where we didn't have so much of the sea rations and that kind of stuff. Food, we had holidays, they tried to give you a pretty good meal for the holidays. And of course, we were there during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, and those holidays for that one period of time. So, all in all, I can't say that it wasn't all that bad.
Well, did you ever get homesick or feel any pressure or stress a little bit over there?
Oh, I had been not really, I've been homesick, but not to the point where it really was affecting me, I don't think. But I was always thinking of hoping that, well, maybe before long we would be headed back to the United States. And I always probably daily thought of being home, getting out.
Yeah.
That was one of the things back then.
Well, what did people do for entertainment? What did you do and what did others do for entertainment around?
Oh, mostly we had movies on occasions, and then they had softball. I think they had volleyball teams once in a while. They had pool tables in the day rooms where you could go there and play pool or tennis tables. And then just sort of looking around the town sometimes.
You mentioned some basketball even too.
Yes, we played. I played on a company basketball team, headquarters company, and then at another point I played on the regimental team for 2 or 3 games, and got to travel to an outlying area at another base or something, and played in a little tournament, but it wasn't nothing real big, but it was a chance to get out and do something. And
you mentioned a lot of guys from Indiana were on a lot of the teams.
Yes, they always seemed to like to have that Hoosier basketball in the people on their teams. If they could get somebody from Indiana, boy, you ought to be able to play basketball right away, you know. And that still is today. I mean, that's...
What did you do when you were on leave? Were you able to travel into some different parts of Japan in that little area?
When I was on the rest period there, we stayed mostly in the area there because travel wasn't the best that we could do at that time, and of course it would be strictly with Army equipment, and we didn't always have access to stuff like that. I mean, so we really didn't travel out and about too far away from the base area, you know. And
but you were able to travel down to Hiroshima. You were able to see Hiroshima.
Well, the reason that I went through Hiroshima was because of the fact that when we deactivated the 544th, then I was assigned to the 3rd Engineer Combat Battalion, and it was stationed in Kokura. So therefore I passed through Hiroshima and went that route down to the southern island of Japan, which is Kyushu, and we were at Kokura, Kyushu, for the balance of my time and with the 3rd Engineer Combat Battalion. And doing company clerk work is what I was. It was still inside work there. And of course the battalion was made up of the 4 companies, and then there was a headquarters company of a battalion, I think, if I recall. But I was one of the outlying companies. I don't know just which one it was. I was assigned to it, keeping there.
Okay, what were some pranks or humorous things that you remember that were done to either you or to members of your unit?
One of them was, I remember, I think it was on a weekend, and of course every chance you got to sleep in, well, that was one thing you like to do. And I don't know which was Saturday or Sunday, but I was asleep, and while during my hour or my time of sleep, I must have been so sound that they carried me in my cot and placed me in the stairway, up and down the stairway, and I didn't even know it until I woke up. And all that time there had been probably officers of the day and everybody wanting to know what was going on, that this guy was out here in the hallway asleep. So I really didn't get in any trouble, but they thought it was kind of amusing that a guy would be out there. And another thing, I used to have a record of one of the classical type songs, and I used to play it a lot on an old, like, Victrola type thing, and some guy broke it, and he thought that was pretty funny, but I didn't. And I always thought it was a good song and always liked to hear it. I guess I overplayed it too much, so anyway, he broke it. So but little things like that, I don't remember too many things. We did have a room boy that helped, and he was a Japanese boy, and we kidded him a lot, if that's something like that you want to know too. We kidded him a lot, and I even visited his home, and he was a nice, really a nice kid, and of course at that time he would have been probably 15 to 16 years old, and of course I was only about 19 something, so we were the old men compared to him as far as that goes. But he was a real swell kid, and he was always interested in us and had fun. We kidded him a lot, but those are a few things. There were other times, and I'm sure other things that I can't recall, but there was always something in the Army to amuse you.
Or were you, do you remember the day that your service in Japan ended? Were you pretty happy and anxious to get home? Do you remember what that was like?
It's just hard to remember. I can faintly remember our company commander tried to talk 2 or 3 of us into staying a little longer, because I think it was going to be hard to replace us at that time, and we sort of said no, we were going home, and we didn't let that part of it worry us any. We wanted to get out of there. So he was a good guy. He was the company commander and of my company, and he did try to get us to stay a little longer to help out, but we couldn't sit. So, but I did get word later after we got home that he was a regular Army type soldier, and that he did get killed in Korea. He went into Korea and was killed. I heard that later on. Mansfield was his name, I think, if I recall, but I'm not sure.
Do you remember what you did the first few days you got back home and first few weeks after you were out of the service?
Oh, I just more or less hung around home with the parents, and of course we had the twin brothers were born while I was on my way over to Japan, and I started to help take care of them, and helped out around the house what little I could. Went into the little town there a lot, and played a lot of independent basketball during the winter. mostly for a couple years didn't do too much of anything.
Did you go to school and use the GI Bill for a part of the time when you came home?
Yes, I went to Indiana State University for one term, enrolled the second term, but decided not to go, and probably I worked then, got various jobs in the spring. I think I helped a farmer out one summer, worked in a farm, and I drove a truck one summer for a clay company out of Bloomingdale, Indiana. And eventually had a chance to come to work, go to work for the power company, public service company, and that's where I retired from.
So how would you say the service affected your life? Did it have a positive effect on your life as far as training and discipline, or how do you think it affected your life?
Well, I think it helped for us to grow up a little and be our own self and our own man, and because we were on our own at an early age, and even though it was a short time, you learned a lot to take care of yourself and not to fall in line with a lot of things that you knew that you shouldn't do and things that you should do, and I thought all in all it was a good experience. And like the guy at basic training told us, it's just a short time and period in your life, and it'll be over with shortly. So it was, and mine was a little less than 2 years total, and I never did figure that up, but that's about what it was, a little less than 2 years.
And while you were there, you were able to have a collection of photographs that you kept in a book, and what you've done is selected 10 photographs that we can talk about a little bit. So maybe you could show us the photographs and explain a little bit. Number one here, and we'll go through several photographs. We've got 10 of them to go over. We can.
Okay.
I'll see if I can zoom in on that.
Okay.
Okay.
If you're in on this one, this is the training company at Camp Livingston. And of course, you didn't get your picture like this until after the training was completed, because so many people that started with the company dropped out for various reasons, either physical or home problems at home, maybe deaths in family, and they didn't get a complete graduate with us. So this was our company, training company at Camp Livingston, Louisiana, and I don't know just how many men are in the group, but the front row is mostly cadre and officers, company commander, post office people, motor pool people, supply sergeants, and things like that. And that's the first picture.
Okay.
And,
good.
Then I have here, the first picture is a picture of the first outfit that I was with after I arrived in Japan and was assigned as the headquarters company of the 544th Engineer Boat and Shore Regiment. And these were a heck of a good bunch of guys, and I didn't know every one of them, but I knew a lot of them, and we always got along good together in that company. And I wasn't in the picture. I think I was working that day. I wish I had been, but I wasn't. So the second picture is myself pulling a friend from Tompkinsville, Kentucky. His name was George Miller, and I'm pulling him in one of the Jenny rickshaws, and this Japanese happened to be, we were on our way back from the work area to the our barracks, and we asked this Japanese Jenny rickshaw operator if we couldn't take pictures with this. So I was the guy doing the pulling, and George was doing the riding. And the third picture there is some of the office people that I worked with in the 544th office, and I can't think of, Maloney was the big guy, and the smaller guy to my left, first one to my left, was Frog, is the only one I remember his name by, and then the other one on Maloney's left, the big guy, his name is Herb, and I can't remember their last names. I didn't write them down. The third picture is, or that would be the fourth picture, is Dynamite. That was sort of the pet of the office area, not particularly the company, but he was sort of around the office all the time, and everybody fed him something and petted him, and he was a great little dog, and he just kind of came there, and we took up with him. The fifth picture is the one at the 3rd Engineer Combat Battalion in Kokura, and that sort of shows, looks like the motor pool area as part of it, and I think this one building there was part of it was barracks also for motor pool people, but our barracks was in and around the area there someplace in the background. The picture here of 7 and 8 are, of course, Hiroshima. Passed through there about 4 different times. I seen some devastation, but I didn't actually pass right in the middle of it because we were on the rail, but there is where I seen some Japanese people who were, some had signs of being hurt and injured in this thing, which was very devastating, and they were hurting an awful lot. So that's Hiroshima, they call it. Then here's a picture of myself with these fellas. We were at a rest and recuperation for, I think, maybe 10 days. I'm not just sure where the location was, if it was around the Wakayama area or where it was, but anyway, it was along the coastline someplace. It may have been in the vicinity, but it's been a long time, I can't remember. But the one guy is from Indiana, and then the others are all from Ohio, most of them. And then the last picture to my left here is a picture on the beach, and we met these former Japanese soldiers who had been injured and were in a Japanese hospital, which was not too far from where we were. And you can see the one has lost a leg during the war. I'm not sure. I believe he said he might have lost out on Okinawa, but I'm not sure. But he was actually well spoken in English, and got caught over there and had to serve in the Japanese army. So we got kind of acquainted with him, and like I say, we never mistreated anybody that I ever knew of. So, you know, that's some of the pictures.
Well, that's good. That's good pictures. Maybe we can just take a look at a map, and you can sort of point out some of the areas that you were in Japan.
Okay.
That would be nice to see.
I was first arrived in Nagoya. It's right in this area here. Then we was transferred to Wakayama, which is right here. That's where the 544th was. And I was there during the whole winter months. And then when it deactivated, of course, we went by rail back then too, and we transferred to Kokura, which is the southernmost island called Kyushu, but Kokura is right at the end of the under the tunnel that goes under the bay area there. We was in Kokura where the 3rd Engineer Combat Battalion was stationed. So we traveled along the coastline evidently, and we passed through Hiroshima here when we went down, and I went back to Kobe at one point. That's right here. I've been there. I was there for temporary duty, then went back to Kokura. So I passed through Hiroshima about 4 times at least, and I can't remember. Then when we came home, I left the replacement depot at Yokohama. That's where we boarded the ship to come back to the United States, and it's not shown on this map, but it was the replacement depot. I don't know where it was, the 4th or the 11th, one of those numbers. Doesn't make any difference, but
well, that's great. Well, thanks a lot for the interview. This is all part of Richard Lugar's program to interview veterans of foreign war, and I think it's a great idea, and this way we can get experiences and facts and information from former veterans of several of the major wars the United States has been in. So
okay.
Thanks a lot and good job. Anything else that you'd like to add that of their experience or anything else?
I'm just glad to do it for you and for the program that you want to turn this into. I think it's good to preserve a lot of things, because myself, a lot of this has gotten away from me since 45, and it's been fun to do it.
Okay, well, great job. Good.
Hope it helps out.
Thanks.